I am thrilled to see all of these folks here to hear Linda speak about her artwork and support Linda in her journey through art school, and how exciting it is that that is coming to an end, the culmination through this exhibit. So thanks very much for joining us here tonight. I'm Lisa Wood. I'm an artist and assistant professor at Brandon University. And Brandon University is located on Treaty 2 territory. So that's homelands of the Dakota, the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji Cree, and the Métis people. And our department at BU has just officially changed our name to include our spirit name, which is Ishkabten's Wasa Ga Inabateg, Department of Visual Art. And Barb Blind is our knowledge keeper, and she gave us that name in 2016. And it actually means little smoke that goes far. So Linda, as you're finishing up your degree, you can think about how you're now going far and going to take the things that you learned here at Brandon University and bring them out into the world. So the BFA honors students at Brandon University create a body of artwork during their thesis year, which they then install at the Glen P Sutherland Gallery. And it's sort of the culmination of everything they've done in their degree. This year with COVID, we've had to pivot, of course, to working in an online scenario. And we're so happy that Linda has been so receptive to trying out these different methods. And, you know, we're really happy that she's here at this artist talk tonight on Zoom. And we're very excited about her show being the new show up on the Glen P Sutherland Gallery website. So you guys will have to check that out, as I say. So tonight, Linda is going to share images of her installation and her artwork and discuss her thematic exploration and her process. And then we'll open it up to conversation during the Q&A. So like I say, when you want to ask a question, please just type question into the chat, or you can actually type the question completely out in the chat and I'll read it out for you. That way we can kind of keep track of all of your faces and who wants to ask questions next and that sort of thing. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Linda.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you, everybody. I'm overwhelmed with all these beautiful faces. I am so delighted that you've come out and well, you didn't come out, you're at home, but it's just a new way of meeting together, and I'm glad that we can do that. So thank you very much. I'm going to be talking about my thesis show, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the context that goes into the pieces and the inspiration, and a little bit about the techniques as well. But before I do that, I really need to say thank you to all of you who have walked with me this long journey, and especially to my husband and my family, because I know there's been some sacrifices there to make this happen. And I'm just so grateful that you care so much for me that you would go that second mile and let me do this in my retirement. And I want to thank everyone else too. My friends and my art comrades and my art groups, fellow students, past and present. And I would like to say a special thank you to my thesis team, Lisa Wood, Kevin DeForest, and Kathy Mattis, for just mentoring so wonderfully and kindly and graciously. You've just been very good to me, and I've learned a lot from you, so thank you. So most of you here know me. I think you all know me pretty well, but if there's anyone that doesn't know me very well, I'll just say that I live in Brandon, Manitoba with my husband Reg, and I have 5 grown children, 13 grandchildren, and 2 great grandbabies, both born this year, and 2 cats. So I spent most of my life being a stay-at-home mom, and then I worked for a couple of years, a few years at the hospital as a medical cleric. And then I retired to do some of the things that I personally love, which are art and writing. I like to write poetry, but other things too, mostly poetry. In 2008, my youngest son decided to go to university and take fine arts, and he invited me to join him. So what are you going to do? I thought that was just absolutely wonderful, and we had a fantastic year together. And obviously it set the tone for me because I'm still here 11 years later. And I'm just glad that I did that. So that's my bio. And now I just like to say that I titled my exhibition Rim of the Visible World because it describes walking on the edge of another dimension. And sometimes that's very, very good because artists like to source their materials sometimes from another dimension. But it also can be very difficult sometimes too. And I think that art is one way for the heart to speak when there are no words. And when I was producing this body of work, my heart needed to speak. And I'm sure that there's others that have times like that in their lives too, and maybe especially this year during the pandemic. But the work you'll see here reflects a journey of trying to find my way. So the work kind of evolved. It wasn't exactly as I had planned it from the beginning. It evolved along the way. I was intrigued at first by the pearl gemstone, because of the way that it's formed. It kind of was a very good metaphor for life and the layers and events in our lives. So a pearl is created by some irritant or maybe a parasite, a grain of sand even, that gets in between the flesh and the shell of the pearl. And as a result, of an oyster. And so then the oyster, as a result, begins to secrete a substance called nacre, or mother of pearl, and it layers over top of itself over and over again, and that's what produces the beautiful iridescent gem that we call the pearl. Well, in this show, you probably won't see many glowing pearls, but that was my initial intention, was to paint literal pearls. But instead, I've gone a different route. I think when we try to make sense of our world and our lives, sometimes there's no way around the struggle. Sometimes you just have to go right through. And in the process, life's layers and challenges create something beautiful inside of us. So that's kind of what my show is about. And you'll see. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. I'm just going to take you there. So let's do that. I'm going to go to share screen. So I'm going to just show you some images from the gallery, but also some of my paintings, and we'll talk about them. Okay, here we go. Okay, so here we are at the rim of the visible world. So come with me. So now I have installed my show in the actual physical gallery, the Glen P Sutherland Gallery, but of course the public cannot go there. So I'm taking you there right now. And when you first come in the door, this is what you would see. This is the title wall right inside the door. And then I have quite a few slides, but I am going to work through them fairly quickly. Most of them will be going quickly. Here is what you see to the right. Now at the front of the gallery, it's kind of like a foyer area where people can gather. So to the right, you see these paintings, and I'll come back and talk about that later on. I can't find my cursor. There it is. Then when you enter into the main room of the gallery, you see this painting, and it's a 5 by 7 foot painting called Elusive. Now, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later too. Right now, I'm just taking you on a little walk around. To the left, you see these two. And before we can carry on, I am going to talk about one of these. This painting is called Breathe. And it wasn't the first painting that I painted in as I was producing the work. This one came about a third of the way through. And because I was dealing with some heavier kind of inspirations, my emotional makeup at the time was maybe I could say a little bit fragile. And I think I'm among friends here, so it's okay to share that, because I know we all have moments like that sometimes. And so this one came about a third of the way through, and I really needed a break. So I just said, okay, I'm going to just make a painting. It's not going to be one for my show, because I need to have a break from that. And I'm just going to do one that I really love and enjoy and have a good time doing. And it really was a breath of fresh air. I often use music to inspire the paintings that I do. I almost always paint to music. And this one was painted to an artist, an Icelandic artist named Askir. My son Ryan introduced me to him, and I love his music. And the song that this painting was inspired by is called Going Home. And there's a line in the chorus that says, going home, my mind's already there. And it was just like that. I felt that when I was painting it. And I was using a technique that I discovered along the way as I was creating pieces for the thesis. So I'm going to talk about that technique a little bit later on. But you can see here, there's a few layers, and it's mostly very thinly applied paint. But then at the end, there were just some highlights that went on with a little more impasto. So that one I really enjoyed making. So I thought that was a good one to start with. And then shadow. Shadow, I use the same technique for shadow. It's putting on thin layers and washing off. Putting on, some of you might remember the Karate Kid with wax on and wax off. Well, this is put the paint on and wash it off over and over again. And something delightful sometimes happens when I'm working, and other artists I'm sure have had this experience too, but for me it's a real delight. And when a figure appears as I'm working, I don't plan that, and I don't think I'm going to make a figure now. Just I'm looking at the painting, and then there she is. And so it's kind of like I say, oh, well, hello there. Thank you for joining me. I'm not painting all by myself. You're here with me. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just finding my own presence there. I don't know. Or maybe it's an angel, but I called it shadow. So then you come along this wall in the gallery, and we'll talk about this piece. The color is a little bit off in this image. It appears more black in the background, but it's really a deep blue. And in the next image where it's close up, it appears more gray. So if you can just imagine it with more of a blue around the outside of it. This painting is called Pearl Heart. I was trying to imagine how a pearl is formed around that irritant. And then I was thinking about the oyster and how painful it would be to have that just pressing on the flesh. So this is like a cross section of a pearl, and the inner part is red because I thought of how inflamed it must feel, but also because that's it. Our hearts are so tender, and that just made me think of that too. I did a couple of details of that painting because I wanted to show. On the left, you can see the paint is applied very thickly. It's called impasto. But on the right, it's and that's on the outer part. It's more layered and thinner applications, which I enjoyed that part because it seemed to me that the inner part was not as beautiful. The outer part was like the outer layers of the pearl, just forming, and you can see through the layers there. I just like that. How could this happen? Was a question I was asking myself at the time in a difficult circumstance. I was looking for the light when I was painting this one, and there seemed to be a struggle, like a battle between light and darkness. And I just kept, every time I tried to, I was using a palette knife and sliding the wet paint over previous layers that were still wet. And I kept wanting to bring the light in, but it kept picking up the dark paint and bringing the dark in, and I was like struggling with that. In the end, I was very pleased with it. I like the contrast in it and the darks and the lights. I ended up being happy with it, but I can't say that it was a pleasure to paint that one. So then we come around to this corner of the gallery. And this piece. I can't see clearly now. It speaks for itself. It's kind of foggy. But I want to tell a little story about this piece because I want to encourage artists who create things that they don't particularly like. And I didn't like this painting, and it wasn't even supposed to be a painting, actually. This one was in my side painting. I sometimes keep a canvas just on the side to warm up with and to, well, experiment on. If I want to try a new technique and I don't want to do it on my real painting, then I'll do it on the side painting. Well, this one already had several layers of leftover paint from other paintings and so on that just got slapped on it. And then I was out for a walk. I picked up a branch and brought it home with me, and I thought, I wonder what would happen if I stenciled the branch. So I did try that, and I laid the branch on it, sprayed it with spray paint, and took it off. And I can't say I was happy with what it looked like. I wasn't happy with the sharp edges, so I grabbed a sponge and started sponging off the sharp edges to make them softer and more glowing. And again, I can't say I was happy with this piece. I wasn't making a piece. I was just trying something out on it. So, but I took it and I showed it to my professors at one of our meetups, and they thought it was kind of interesting. And the more I looked at it, the more I really liked it too. So I didn't experiment on it anymore. I decided, okay, I'm going to keep that one. But then the most fascinating part that I learned, and that I think other artists learn too, is that our experimenting and our mistakes and our trying it over again, even on the piece that we thought we should just throw away, sometimes that we discover things, or it can turn out to be beautiful. But in this one, I discovered something, and that was the technique of using the sponges and washing on and applying the paint and washing it off. I love that technique. It just feels so great. And so that's that piece. This wall on the right is the back of the wall with the big colorful painting that you saw coming into the gallery. And it's called Birth of a Pearl. On the left is the placenta, and all the spheres in this placenta are representing different life events, and some of them are joyful, some of them are not, but it's all of them combined together that go together to nurture the pearl eventually. And I created the figure to appear a little bit hard on the outside, because I think the experiences we go through, sometimes we do harden a little bit, or we have a protective layer around us. But inside, we're still nurtured by all those beautiful things and terrible things, all of the things put together that went to nurture us and grow us into a pearl. that's the context of that. The technique was, the placenta was, that word doesn't, I don't even like that word, but it's what it is. It was, again, the technique of putting the paint on and washing it off. And there's a little bit closer look so you can see the layers underneath that show through. And I think that just reminds me of the corrections and errors that we go through in life. They're there and we can still see them somewhat. They're still visible. They're still part of who we are. And there's some kind of preciousness about that. This is the umbilical cord, and I just did a little detail of it to show that there's some texturing in it as well, coming from the placenta. And this I took from the first painting on the left, because I used two different applications. The one on the left was the painting on and washing off. And on the right, I put quite an impasto layer of oil paint. And then I used my hands to make the textured background. And I really enjoyed that because it was a more intimate engagement with the painting rather than using a paintbrush or a knife or a trowel. Or it was my hands. And I really felt that working on it and enjoyed that part of it. So we come to this part of we're coming around and we're going back toward the front of the gallery now. And on this wall, all these pieces have a very similar palette and are done in very similar ways as well. This first one is a triptych and it has a poem that goes with it. So I'm going to read that after, but first I'd just like to mention a little something about each of these paintings. I'll go quickly with them. They were all done with that technique, painting it on and washing it off over and over and over again. And because I've always been so inspired by the mystics, they feed my soul. I just love that they have in their minimalistic lifestyle, they've been able to focus in on things that maybe in our busy lives, we don't have as much time to do that. So I like to glean from them. And this one is from Thomas Merton, who was a Trappist monk. I'm sure you've heard of him. I read a little book of his called Seeds of Contemplation, and it really blessed me. And he has a quote, if I can remember it now, he says, art is a way that we find ourselves and lose ourselves at the same time. And that's kind of true. But in this painting, I enjoyed the shafts of the light that just appeared. And again, I looked at them and I saw them as some ethereal beings. They had a presence and they were bringing light over the landscape. The second one is a tribute to Teresa of Avila, who was a Spanish Carmelite nun in the 16th century. I don't know how I discovered her, but someone maybe recommended a book to me. I read a book that she had written called Interior Castle. She had extreme mystical encounters with God, and some people found her to be a little bit too far gone, and other people really valued what she had to say. In her book Interior Castle, she speaks about different encounters with God as mansions within this castle. It's a beautiful book, and I've painted a few paintings with the title Interior Castle just because it moved me so much. So that's for you, Teresa of Avila. And this one is a tribute to Frank Laubach, who was a Christian missionary to the Philippines. My friend Maria offered a little book that he had written called Letters of a Modern Mystic. And he is actually credited with bringing literacy to a lot of the population there. And in his book, while he was there, working in ministry, he decided he wanted to acknowledge God more frequently in his daily life. In fact, so frequently, he wanted to do that for 1 second out of every minute of his waking life. And so I found that so inspirational. And he writes almost like a journal of as how he was walking through that and how he struggled with it and where he failed. And he was just very vulnerable in his writing, and I loved it. So I know I'm going on and on, but all the little light spots, all the little sparkles in this, those are those seconds out of the minutes of Frank Laubach that he dedicated to God. Just a nod, just a, I know you're there, Lord. And now I like to read the poem. This is not how this piece appears on the gallery wall, but I figured because this is virtual, I could take a little creative license and do it a little differently. But here's the poem. We brave invisible walls. We search and we surrender with desire and trust to sense from another realm of perfumes unknown, to sounds of musical pleas, divine oracles, to love beyond our limits, all together one. We brave invisible walls to marvels of peace. Limbo. Again, the same technique. I don't need to say it again. It was just that. And as I did this, the spheres began to surface. And I suppose some might think of them as planets, but I thought of them as pearls. And I thought they were kind of unsettled. They're just floating. And so that's where I came up with the title, Limbo. Now, most of you have seen this painting because it was in the advert that we sent out. It has a bit of a story. It didn't look anything like this when I began. It started out as an oil painting. I was at an art retreat at Camp Wanna Come Back at Clear Lake. And I was painting a beautiful, peaceful scene of a woman in a flowing white dress walking out into a field of daisies that were lit with the morning sun. It was one of those images that are just, I don't know, absolutely calming and peaceful and beautiful. I wanted to paint that, and I struggled and struggled. I could not pull it together. And I finally had to come to terms with who I am as an artist. Many other artists can paint that way, but for me, it has to come from inside of me. And I was trying to create something that wasn't inside of me at that moment. And so I just kept going with it and layering and layering. And at one point, her dress came off. And I guess I'd have to say that was all about just being vulnerable and recognizing that, I'm have to be real with this. I want to be sincere with my art. And I felt extremely vulnerable, and I felt lost as I was creating, at the time that I was creating this piece. There was lots of good things. I'm talking a lot about how lost I felt and how I was trying to work through emotional things, but there was a lot of wonderful things in my life at that time too. But in working with this piece, that's what had to come out. So it did, and it changed a lot. And the drippings that are on it, I think I did with a product that comes from a company called Green. I think that's what it's called. Rather than using the terpenoid, I used that, and it worked very well. So that's Lost. A similar kind of image, this one is called Emerge. And it started very differently too. I'm going to show you on the next slide how it started. It's completely different. This just, I kept working it, and again, an image appeared. And I love when that happens. She just emerged. It also has some stenciling in it. And the striping that comes down, I was inspired by a painting by a Scottish artist, Peter Doig. And he made a painting called Coburg 3+1. He likes to paint not memories, but memory, which is a different concept. So he takes images from his own life, or mostly, I think, from his own life. And then he just creates around that, and he changes it somewhat. And some people say the style that he works in is called magical realism. But in that painting, he had these stripes going down that was representing snow. Oh, did I do that? Oh my goodness, what's happening? I must have pressed a highlighter or something. Just a minute. Oh, nope. I didn't. I'll quit moving my hands. Anyway, it was snow in his painting, but I just liked it, so I put it in here too. Yeah, how am I going to get rid of that? No, the eraser won't highlight for me, so I guess we'll have to look past it. I don't know what happened. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how to fix that. Do you know, Lisa?
I'm trying to figure out if it has come from Zoom or from your PowerPoint. It looks like it's on your PowerPoint because it's stopped right at the top. But
Okay.
I think that we can probably just keep going. Somebody
Okay.
has said try Control Z.
Okay, I'll try that. Control Z. Nope.
Okay. Well, I think it's best if we
Okay.
just if we keep going. And
Okay.
luckily, it's not too too terribly distracting.
Linda, could you try the hidden button? You were in the
Okay.
when you were selecting that? Yeah.
Hidden.
Is that no, that's not changing anything.
That
Sorry.
didn't do anything either.
Is it possible to bring it out of play mode so you can edit without being played? Because some features of some programs don't exactly allow them to be edited while actually being played.
Fine. Well, what do you think? Now I can't even find my cursor.
Linda, how many more slides do you have? We're just at 7:35, so I was curious
Yeah,
about.
we're just right at the end.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
3 more slides.
Okay. If you want to try popping out and then playing again, you can definitely do that, or we can keep going. But we won't take too much time to figure it out.
Okay, oh, here, let me see. How about that draw thing? That looks like where it's at. If I go, I can't even get my mouse back now. Oh, there. Well, this is too bad.
You're okay, Linda. I'd actually keep going at this point.
Okay, I'm just trying to get my mouse back so I can actually go down and I don't have a cursor.
You can try hitting escape, Linda. That might help.
Okay, we're back here. That's okay. Well, anyway, then we come to this piece. And this is how it started. This was, again, putting the paint on and washing it off. And that was also something that was inspired to me by Helen Frankenthaler, an artist who kind of went a little bit further than Jackson Pollock did. She would stain her canvases with turpentine diluted oil paint, raw canvas. I wasn't doing that, but I was putting the paint on and washing off and staining it. This was done because I didn't like what I started on, and I tried to wash it off and it didn't do very well. But in the end, this is what came of it. And this is called Elusive. It's a 5 by 7 foot painting. And I guess it's just expressing, there's a figure there in the foreground, and she's in a bit of a pose of desperation. She's on a rocky terrain and she's reaching for something that she actually becomes a part of, as you can see in these details. Her hand coming into the haze just doesn't really disintegrate, but it kind of evaporates into it, and she becomes one with that. And the detail on the left, I really enjoyed the way that turned out. I thought that could be a painting by itself. And there's the layers there as well that we can see. And the light in the lake, I think, added a dimension of reminding me that there's joy even in difficulty. I included Pearl Essence, even though it was a painting that I did in one of my classes with Kevin DeForest. And I think it was painting 4. And it was a sundog. I had taken a picture of a sundog on a very cold winter day on our way to Winnipeg. And I used that image to create this, and I set it into a sea of lapis lazuli, which is also a gemstone and one of my favorites. But I included this in with my thesis show just because I thought I really did need to have something glowing and something that was pearl-like. It has the essence of a pearl. And this is where those blue lines are crazy. This is where where that painting hangs in the gallery, and you can see that there's a poem alongside it as well that I paired it with. And so I'm going to close with that poem, and then we can go to our questions or whatever. Jewels. Beauty is not lost in despair. Every brutal bite of circumstance or sting of flying words and every blow of loss that staggers is a jewel. After mourning, joy. After loss, gain. After weakness, strength. Gems from the shattered heart. Diamonds, emeralds, pearls, and lapis lazuli. So thank you very much for listening and watching and putting up with some of these strange things that happen along the way. This is a first, so I guess we can expect some little bloopers here. But I hope you will go on to the Glen P Sutherland Gallery of Art online and see the show there too. So thank you for staying with me to the end.
Wonderful job, Linda. I wonder if we can get some questions from people. And again, if you wanted to just type in a question to the chat, I can turn it over to you, and or you can type out your whole question right in the chat and I'll answer it.
Whoops. Okay. I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, to come out of the...
No, I can go back
either way, Linda, either way.
Okay, well, if anybody wants to talk about a specific piece, I can go back in.